Joseph, welcome to the show. We're going to talk about higher ed. By the way, can you do that with somebody who dropped out of Cal Berkeley and didn't complete? Anyway, why don't you give people about info on your background, what you're doing today, and let's dive in. It sounds like we've got some stuff to talk about.
Don't call me Joseph because then I feel like I'm in trouble. So we'll start there. But Should
I call you doctor?
No, don't do that either. Don't do that either. I have a doctorate. I am not a doctor. But it's funny because in higher education, it's one of those areas where, you have a doctorate. People like to be called doctor. I'm not an academic. I got my doctorate so that I could speak more plainly and openly with the academics. But my background's in higher ed, guys. I've been in higher ed about 20 years. I started in the for-profit sector, and what we saw is a big decline in the for-profit sector from, let's say, 2000 to 2008, 2009 were the golden years for for-profit education, and then it declined during the Obama administration and new regulations. But that's when, you used to be able to say things like sales in higher ed and so on. But that's where I got my start, and started out with a startup company in Denver, Colorado, and moved to a regionally accredited institution with 42 campuses across the U.S. and 10,000 online students shortly after that. Now I'm at a university called Claremont Lincoln University. It's 100% online by design university in Claremont, California, though obviously we are online and servicing students all over the country and world. And it's going great. We offer graduate degrees, and I've been doing this, feels like a long time now.
So there may be people who actually don't know exactly the term higher ed. I'm not going to claim I'm an expert in it. How would you put those different buckets between higher ed and universities, colleges, et cetera?
Yeah, I think higher education is any degree or really non-degree education beyond the high school level. So that would include all undergraduate programs, any skills building that people do even in the non-credit space. If you go take a coding boot camp, that could be considered higher education. And then there's a difference between something could be a college but not a university. So there's that nuance. But typically, if you break them into sectors, there's the public sector, right? There are public research universities. There are private colleges. Many people go to a small private university. Catholic colleges or Lutheran colleges would be included in there, anything with religious background. And then there's the career college sector, which and those are usually designated by tax status that separates those institutions. It's a simple designation, but comes with a lot of regulatory differences amongst the different sectors. So that's the easiest way to conceptualize higher education: public, private. There's community colleges of their own entity. There's a lot going on.
Wow. And I'd actually be curious about the regulatory, but I don't know that our audience is, so I won't go into that.
I don't want to bore everybody to death.
Yeah. But I'm curious, has the COVID thing with all this work from home and people, shifting in that direction, has that really helped higher ed? Because then are people more available for higher ed opportunities, and how does that help them in the job? Maybe I'm going too broad here, but really curious, what's the impact?
That's a really good question, and it's been variable. We've seen, first of all, let me say that the type of institution and the way that they offer education has been a big pivot for higher ed, right? You think about a university that offers all on-ground courses, now moving to COVID. They've got to, COVID comes in, and now you got to take, 5,000 courses and 500 faculty and get them online as soon as possible. So we saw really big institutions move their classes online very quickly, which higher ed traditionally doesn't move quickly, right? That's a big secret, although I don't know if it's a secret or not. But if I asked you, David, if I said, give me the top 3 industries that move the fastest, I don't think higher education would be on your list.
No.
Right. So that, when we saw everybody move online and everybody at the beginning of COVID immediately going home and having more screen time, there was a bit of an uptick in enrollment. My institution in particular, and then so many other institutions out there. And I think that was because of what you're saying. Like, I'm at home. What am I going to do? I might as well go back and get a degree with my own time. Well, then K through 12 institutions started shutting down. And your 8-year-old that used to go to school isn't going to school anymore. They're sitting at the kitchen table doing online school. And so you as a parent that would have had some level of free time, now you're working. Now you've got an 8-year-old working next to you, or 10-year-old, or whatever, pick your age, multiple kids. I know some of the employees I have kids at home, several of them. And you have this mental health and stress factors that compound the space and in your brain. And so then we saw students really pull out at the last minute and go, I just can't handle it. I just can't handle it. Not only am I having kids at home, even though I might be on the computer more, I can't do anymore. And then that was sort of during the summertime. All right. So at the beginning, we saw like the March, April, May timeframe of 2020. We saw students commit and say, I'm going to do this. We're going to be home for a while. Then June, July, August hit with spikes, and everybody says, I don't think so right now. Then it moves to the fall, and more people are getting interested again. It's really impossible to predict. That's been really what is killing some schools, is the predictive analytics that we have to tell us how many enrollments we're going to have over what period of time is just all smoke and mirrors right now.
Wow. And so when somebody commits to do online higher ed, how many hours a week is that typically? Or I would assume it varies based on the course load.
It does. Each course, each credit is defined usually by the federal government, the Carnegie unit it's called. So each unit within a 3-credit course, each credit has a specific number of hours, in class and out of class hours. So typically, if you see a course, you're really looking at a 15, let's just say on an average 15 to 18 hours a week work for that course. Now, if you take 2 courses, then you double that, right? So let's just say you're 24 on the low side hours a week. How do you fit that in with a full-time job, with kids? That's what adult learners typically have done. That's what I did. I went back for my master's. I got my doctorate with 2 kids. And, you know, my wife and kids would go to sleep. I would come downstairs. I would do my homework for like, an hour and a half, or I would work out in the garage because I have some weight equipment in the garage for an hour, then do my homework for an hour and a half. So my time between, let's say 9 and midnight, 1 o'clock was spent doing, working out and a little bit of homework. It's hard to handle, but it's possible, especially with really quality online institutions.
Wow. That sounds challenging.
That's tough.
That sounds challenging. So, so you've got the late night approach. You probably have the opposite, an early morning approach, and then you got to hold down the job and keep the kids going. So what makes it work for people? Where's the motivation? I mean, they want to get the degree. They want to have the additional skills, knowledge. What's kind of the tipping point that makes somebody decide, hey, I got to do this, not I want to do it?
I'll answer that and say, there's a big push right now for 21st century skills. And what that means is the 4th industrial revolution comes our way and technology begins to dominate our lives. One of the areas that's been lacking is the human skills. The dialogue, we teach at Claremont Lincoln University, it's mindfulness, dialogue, collaboration, and change. We call that the Claremont core. They're foundational skills for the 21st century, so that amidst all this technology, you can still have an honest conversation like we're having. And even though we might disagree on something, be able to respect each other at the other end and not have a riot on our hands. Our society isn't typically good at mindfulness and dialogue right now, especially. So we see a lot of that. Now, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, and there's a lot of businesses out there, and there's 2 camps that have materialized through the last couple of years. And the first camp is the question of value of a college degree. Do you really need a college degree to do your job? I'm an entrepreneur. Maybe I have a bachelor's degree. Maybe I don't. Do I need one to run my company? Maybe not. We see some of the biggest, most successful entrepreneurs in the world, like Bill Gates, who failed out of high school and went on to start, Microsoft. So there's this question of investment, right? We've seen mounting debt that goes into that camp, and you see an entrepreneur or a business owner that's or a father or a mother say, I'm not taking on that debt, and I don't want my kid to take on that debt because it's not worth it. And in the other camp, You have the people who still value and see value in a college degree. Statistics still show that earnings go up with degree level, depending on the type of industry you work on. There are still some careers where it's mandatory to have some level of education, like nursing, for example. You can't just growth hack your way to a nursing career. You've got to go and get formal education. So, and then there's some people in the middle, but those, the concept of an ROI, a return on investment for higher ed has been foreign. Let's just say beyond the last couple of years. It's reared its head now as people say, I'm going to take on some level of debt. What's my return? What's my return on investment? And typically higher education doesn't produce an ROI, at least not one that's short-term visible. Maybe it's long-term, but people who are adult students, which we call the new traditional student, not the 18-year-old going away to college. It's the adult student, like you said, with family and kids at home, that says, what do I get for my money? And, that's, we call, I call it, and I've written a lot about it, student consumerism. And the student is a more savvy consumer that understands the finance of their decisions. And that makes education move on our toes a little bit faster.
But isn't an organization like yours much more cost effective than me going to Stanford or whatever online, type of thing? The other thing I'm curious about is, which I see you nodding your head yes, for those of people listening to the audio. So does your organization also offer the core college degree, or you just do the higher ed piece?
We do the graduate degree piece. So our institution is all at the master's degree level. Okay. To your point, and this is something that I think it goes along with what I was talking about the opinions of higher education. Typically, and people outside of higher ed don't know this, but adjunct instructors, adjunct online faculty, which means you're a faculty member teaching a course at an institution, you're not a full-time employee. Online faculty might teach at Stanford and teach at my institution and teach at some private college in Nebraska and teach at the University of Florida. So you could end up, the days of having full-time faculty, completely differentiated, are I'm not saying they're coming to an end, but they're surely a little less exclusive now because you can get the same faculty member that teaches for multiple institutions. So now you have big dollar schools, as Stanford, Harvard, those types of schools, now offering online courses for the same cost they'd offer on ground. You have to ask yourself, is there ROI there, or is it really for the exclusive at this point? Because you're not paying for dorms, you're not paying for food, you're paying for an education that quality-wise across the spectrum, with the way education is delivered nowadays, using technology and online education, is pretty similar institution to institution. What makes it different is the engagement, could be the content, it could be the individualized attention, but all in all, quality is pretty, I don't want to say equal, but it's pretty close across the board. So the question is, are you paying for a network or do you need a degree? Right.
Well, and I want to go back to something you said earlier about what you're teaching. You're teaching, it sounds like a lot of soft skills, and we're all about soft skills in what we do, because we find one of the flaws in the United States educational system is we don't teach soft skills. So we don't teach, how to work together as a team, how to be a leader, how to manage money, how to communicate, how to avoid drama, the whole, there's so many of them there, time management, pursuing goals, that type of thing. And if you're teaching those, I can see that that's a huge value add for people to get that at a high level and come in and be able to articulate. If they're spending that much time in class, I would assume it's not all book work. There's
right.
Actually a lot of, role-playing exercises, whatever. So they come away actually developing the skill in some new habits rather than just having some knowledge.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. So I, being in higher ed for so long, and the reputation we have is generally slow and boring unless you work within higher education. But nobody, when you think about higher ed, you go, oh gosh, I'm going to sit in the class with a giant book and read historical context about, this or that. But I think higher education typically can be fun. There's a lot of innovation within higher ed. Ed tech companies are growing. So my partner and I, his name's Elvin Freitas, we started a podcast called The EdUp Experience, which is really focused on higher education. We were really lucky enough to get a gentleman by the name of Bernie Weiss, and he's the president of iHeartMedia in New York City. Kind of a big get for us when we were first starting. And he said exactly what you're saying. He said, I've got all these employees, and I need them to be taught in college how to sell. And nobody teaches sales. Yeah, you teach communication, but I need somebody to teach sales, interpersonal communication, reading body language, how to make an ask, how to really build those, as you call them, soft skills. And in higher, it's funny you say soft skills because also in higher ed right now, we're battling with that terminology. Nobody in higher ed likes to call it soft skills because it feels too weak. These are important skills. These are essential business skills is what people are calling more evergreen skills. Yeah, the workplace competency skills. So yeah, and to his point, it was nobody's teaching sales. I need people who are going to want to come out and be account managers and know how to do it. So it's so critical. We that's where we get the interest in our programs at Claremont Lincoln Universities. People specifically looking for those next level leadership skills to go out and make some type of sustainable social change too. You're not going to be able to change anything unless you get people on board with your vision. And that's what we teach: ethical leadership, collaborative leadership, and we're having a lot of success with what we teach right now.
Yeah, and that's huge because so many people get promoted into a role because they were a superstar, they perform well, or they've been there longer, and yet they've never had any leadership training. And we get called in for that also. And so that has a big value add for people to do that. And, going back to the sales thing too, I don't think a lot of people realize that even if you have no interest in a sales career, it can be really beneficial to understand how to sell something because you're going to want to convince someone of your opinion someday or something you believe in. Like you kind of alluded to our country is really fractured today. It's really a mess. And there are so many people out there that have double standards. They're like, and I see it on the liberal and the conservative side. They'll say, oh, those guys are mean. They're terrible. They're awful. And yet if you listen to the person, they end up doing the same thing they're accusing the other person of. And if we could learn how to have open dialogue and, okay, we're going to disagree in some areas, but we don't have to be mean about it.
Exactly. That example is so key. And we have a lot of students that come to us exactly for that reason, because they want to learn better ways to even diffuse those types of situations as they arise. I think the other part of it is, I talked to one college president and he said, no matter what major one of the students pick at my college, the day they graduate, they've majored in business and sales. Because for the rest of their life, they're going to be selling something themselves mostly. You're going to ask a girl out, you're going to be selling yourself. You're going to, you want to figure out who's going to take out the garbage, you or your wife or your kids, you're going to be selling them on the reasons they should do it instead of you. And so that is going to be happening the rest of your life. So these soft skills that you reference, they're going away because technology has us. I mean, you probably know this. I was at David, you probably see it too. I was at the eye doctor yesterday to get my annual vision checked. And I'm looking around, there's like 8 people in there. I have my mask on. I'm looking around and right down the line, every single person's got their phone and they're looking down, right? People are walking in and out. Nobody's looking around. We're glued to our devices. I'm not any better than anybody else. I promise you. I try to watch it, but then you lose this. Hey, how are you? What do you do? Moments that we used to have. And now put COVID on top of that. The networking is hard. We're networking via Zoom, via whatever online platform people are using today. And the old handshake and get a cup of coffee days have been over for a while. So, then what? Then you've got to start perfecting your relationship building skills. It's key. It's key for entrepreneurs. It's key for business owners, higher education. If we lose the ability to develop relationships, your business is done. You're not going to be able to survive.
Oh, totally agree. Another thing I'm wondering, what about discerning truth? Do you have any course on that? Because now once again, I'm not taking sides. Whatever side you want to take, somebody's being blocked and you wonder whether that's fair that they're being blocked and somebody else has wide open and it's being pushed. And how do you discern truth in a world that's built on partial truths?
Boy, if you and I can answer that question, we're going to go get on President's cabinet right now and figure it out. I don't know what we do internally. We have a lot of discussion board work where we use as many current events as possible, because without those current events, people aren't generally interested in education, right? If you're going to think about doing being a better leader, you want to focus on something that's happening right now. I think with mindfulness, it's realizing that your truth is your truth, whether it's the truth or not. What you believe to be true, it may be impossible to change somebody's opinion. So what our faculty really spend time on is extracting the dialogue, the back and forth dialogue, and perspective acceptance, rather than trying to convince somebody out of what they think is the truth. It's getting people to come to some level of common ground understanding versus discerning truth, because that's impossible sometimes when somebody believes something so truly that it's accurate and it's not. It's hard to convince them out of that. I think finding some level of common ground is really the first spot, but that's through facilitation. That just doesn't happen. You have to work people through that exercise to get there.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of Greg Kokel. He does evangelism. And he has what he calls the columbo questions, where he asks, what do you mean by that? And then, they'll explain their stuff, and he'll sincerely engage in dialogue. And then he'll say, the second one, which is, well, why do you believe that's true? And he just leaves it at that and accepts it if they have a different viewpoint. He's not looking to do battle. He's looking to plant a seed. Maybe he has the opportunity to come back for another conversation. Maybe he doesn't. But as you say, part of the teaching is to help people accept the fact that somebody has a different life experience. They have different data points, and they may not have information you have. You may not have information they have. And in that one conversation, you're not going to get them to do a 180.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I feel bad for entrepreneurs and business owners right now, because they don't have the same ability to really develop those relationships in the market, right? Even when they're trying, you think about disagreements, we're all offering a product to solve something. And we see it in higher ed too. We try to develop business relationships with companies out there. And I feel bad for people that don't have that skill set right now. They can't take a skill set and, I don't know, customize it to technology. I feel bad. And I don't know where you are, but in California here, if you drive in any direction, you see boarded up, buildings with lease agreements that are probably closed. And so that our people skills and our ability to accept each other's differences is what is fracturing, or lack of ability to accept each other's differences is what's fracturing this nation. And I'm not getting political with it, but if we don't figure out really how to compromise, it's like a lost art right now. Really?
Yeah,
is.
I'm just northeast of Sacramento.
Oh, okay. So you're where yeah. Okay.
No, I get it. I got a text 2 hours ago on something that's crazy political. That's not even by a guy who's heavily political. He's just like, can you believe this is happening? So, I think it is really a difficult time. I think that it's a time for a change. One of the things about America is that we're our best when we are at our worst.
Yeah.
And I believe we've got a good future. I don't believe the main leaders that are going to step up and bring back unity have appeared yet. And I think they're going to appear. And I think when they do, the people that you've got in your higher ed, people that want to learn, and younger people, they're searching for truth. They're searching for how do we work together? Where is this? They're going to come together, and we're going to have a brighter tomorrow. Right now, it's too much crash and burn. So
yeah, and I agree.
Yeah. So I think it's great what you're doing. So I would, before we get going on all this other stuff, I don't know about you, but I could talk forever.
Sure.
How can people learn more about what you're doing? Because I'm really intrigued. I have not talked to people in higher ed that are really focused on the competencies or soft skills, whatever you want to call them. And whether it's just blending those with some additional learning or they're standalone, that is so important. I run into it every day with businesses that have needs for leaders or even just regular team members who could behave better. And it would be better for them. They'd enjoy their work more, and others would be more productive with them, the whole thing.
So www.claremontlincoln.edu is our website. But on top of the degree programs and those courses that we teach in our Claremont core, those are the names of the courses: mindfulness, dialogue, collaboration, and change, right? So, and people are genuinely changed after taking those courses. We get student feedback all the time, and they go, wow, I didn't even know I had this bias, or that I was not accepting this person's opinion. They have these light bulb moments. It's really incredible. We also have non-credit courses, right? We call these like business development courses, which are self-paced, and people can take them really in their own time and at their own pace. That they aren't for college credit, but what they are for business development. We have them in women's leadership. We have it in unconscious bias. We have one in mindful leadership. So any business out there, and we get a lot of interest in these. Somebody wants to train their staff on the DEI stuff that's happening, diversity, equity, inclusion. Our unconscious bias course is really doing well out there. And, for a really small fee, you can get the professional development for people to start developing those skills in the workplace, because we all know how important it is sensitivity is right now. Sensitivity is high and for individuals, and so as leaders we have to be very sensitive about what we say and how we say it.
Yeah, and I just want to encourage our audience that when we talk sensitivity, Joe, I'm sure you're on the same page as me. We're not saying everybody's a racist. We're not going to an extreme, okay? There are those out there that want to go there, okay? And we're not going there. But to be candid with you, when George Floyd was murdered by that cop, and I love our police, okay? I was brought up, you respect John Law, they're on your side. But I had to come to a deeper realization that for many of my Black brothers and sisters and people of color, that hasn't been the case for them. And we had some, sharing by a guy in our church and some things he's gone through, and he's an ER doc or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just eye-opening for me. And so the sensitivity thing has a place when it's done at the right level. It sounds like that's what you've got. And certainly something for somebody to look into. Also, keep in mind, online university, this type of course, I've got clients all the time saying, okay, I want to have a team bonding event, with my team. Yeah. With the right type of course in that area, that can be really beneficial. And it also comes into male-female relationships.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of guys can be really caustic, and a lot of women can behave in a way that can put off the guys. So it's, there's things to learn there, and it's not all touchy-feely. It's not all you're a racist type of thing. There's some real value. And I encourage our audience, check it out. Not to lose, everything to gain. Once again, give them the URL, Joe, so they've got that. And whether, you want people to contact you directly, that's your call.
Yeah, www.claremontlincoln.edu. Absolutely contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn, Joe Sallustio, and then I have my own website, I almost forgot my own name, joesallustio.com. And then you can also find the EdUp Experience podcast at edupexperience.com. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of me. People can find me wherever. I'm easily located.
Fabulous. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Joe. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Same here.